Baseball isn't just numbers, numbers, numbers.
This game is not being played on computers.
You don't do that with a bunch of statistical gimmicks.
You don't put a team together with a computer.
We're talking weighted runs created plus,
expected WOBA,
his sweet spot rate,
defensive runs above average,
average exit velocity,
barrel rate,
xFIP,
BABIP,
SIERA.
We are
above replacement radio.
And welcome to Above Replacement Radio, where we're talking baseball kind of whenever. I'm your host, Christianta. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, I have been humbled tonight by Mother Nature. I was aiming to drive from my home to my apartments in New York, which is about a little over a 2-hour drive normally. We have a snowstorm that's in tonight. I thought I could make the drive, and I could not do it. I mean, the haters said I couldn't do it, and they were right. I'm currently in a hotel room, an hour away from both locations, I guess, kind of at a midway points. I literally made the decision like basically an hour ago as we're recording this that I was going to do this. This was very last minute that I made this executive decision, but hey, podcast always comes first, right? Had to find a place where I could find a spot to record at a reasonable time. We have a lot to get into tonight. It's 9 p.m. as we're recording this. I don't want to keep you up too late. I got to work tomorrow morning. So always thinking about the pod.
Yeah, for sure. Snow can really throw off plans. I'm someone who maybe, it was probably 3 months ago, I bumped my car into a guardrail on the highway in a bit of a snowstorm. It was fresh snow, and yeah, do not brake on the highway in snow because it will punish you.
Especially a crowded one.
Yeah, exactly.
As crowded as snowy highways can be, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. The car is fine though, by the way, if anyone's concerned.
Huge.
But yeah, a big piece of news, probably the final big piece of news of the offseason, arrived early this past week. Alex Bregman signed a 3-year, $120 million deal with the Boston Red Sox. It, of course, has opt-outs after both 2025 and 2026. What was your reaction to this whole ordeal?
Yeah, I mean, this kind of changes the dynamic of the Red Sox in so many different ways. It's not just their outlook for 2025, but it's the outlook that a lot of fans have with the front office. It's the outlook for some major parts of the team, right? The Red Sox had, I would say, 4 major needs this offseason. One of them was to get an ace, or maybe at least like an ace and another starter. They did that with Garrett Crochet. They did it with Walker Buehler. They needed to address the bullpen. I would argue they didn't really do that. They signed Aroldis Chapman, but that's just about it. But the other 2 were improve the infield defense and sign a right-handed bat in the middle of the order. And Alex Bregman does 2 of those 3 things. Of everyone left available, I think he was the best option in terms of filling those needs. He is going to be slotted into the heart of the Red Sox lineup. He's going to be playing defense in the infield, whether it be second base or third base. But regardless, they've notoriously had one of the worst infields defensively in baseball for basically the entire 2020s, and did nothing to address that this offseason. You now have a Gold Glove caliber third baseman coming in, and we don't really know where he's going to be this season, but regardless, he's going to give such a huge, a big needed outlook to that infield, along with hopefully Story staying healthy this year. But this is such a massive signing, and I think it's literally, if you're a Red Sox fan, I don't think you could have asked for a better contract to have signed Alex Bregman to than 3 years and 120 mil.
Yeah, no doubt. Because yeah, when we were talking about Alex Bregman, and just kind of the remaining big free agents, it was Bregman at the time, Alonso, Flaherty, Tanner Scott. It was like late December. We kind of just went through all of them and potential destinations and what our desires were, like whether we wanted them on the Red Sox or not. And I personally, I guess, was maybe pushing against the Alex Bregman grain and saying, maybe this isn't a necessary move. And but but I was saying that under the assumption that he was going to sign a 5 to 7 year deal. And that was, obviously not the case. Now it's, a maximum of 3 years has the potential to only be a 1 year deal. And I think for the Red Sox, the best case scenario is that it is a 1 to 2 year deal. And that is why I really, really love this signing is because, like, and why I wouldn't have liked the signing prior to it being signed is, I thought it was going to be a long-term solution for a very short-term problem, and a bit of an overcommitment. But now I think it serves as a solution for a very appropriate amount of time. And yeah, that's why it looks really good. For context there, why I think it was, a short-term problem is because Christian Campbell and Marcelo Meyer, they're both top 10 or top 15 prospects in MLB, both infielders. And, with Christian Campbell particularly, I believe a right-handed bat. So, that was kind of a shorter term problem that Alex Bregman was going to solve. Now, he's probably only going to be around for 1 or 2 years unless the Red Sox try to extend him, which, we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I think this greatly improves the Red Sox in their current state. And it really makes me feel much more optimistic about their playoff chances this year.
And even if Bregman does stay here for 3 years, you're talking about a guy that you're getting through age 33. And, I know that there's been an offensive decline in recent years, but a lot of the essential things are staying, right? I've talked about Alex Bregman for so many years as a guy that pulls a lot of the essential batted balls, the fly balls, the line drives. The MLB average for the pull rate on fly balls last year was 27%. Bregman has been above that every single year of his career, except for 2016, not even his rookie year, but his first year in the big leagues, where he had a 26.7% pull rate. So he's been right there with the average. It's gotten as high as 40%, but that was in 2019. It was up to 34% as recently as 2022. Obviously, this is a guy that I think we can see spraying a lot of balls off the monster, hitting it over them. He has a 1240 OPS at Fenway. In the, albeit small sample size of games that he's played there in his career, but regardless, he's clearly loved hitting there for his career. And, even if he's here for 3 years, I think this is a guy that's, going to be worth putting in the lineup every single day. Not to mention, the low strikeout rates. I didn't even get into that part of it yet. He's been consistently a guy with around 15% strikeout rate every single year. In fact, it's been under 15% every year since 2017. That's something that the Red Sox desperately need. They've had a lot of, strikeout issues in the last few years. Last year especially was tough, but Bregman's going to, be a piece that solves that problem while not making too many other sacrifices on offense.
Right, right. And yeah, something that I also enjoyed seeing, I think it was maybe Jeff Pasner reported it the night of the signing, was that the plan is that Alex Bregman is going to start out as a second baseman. And personally, I enjoy that, and I'm sure that can change over the course of the year. But I really like that, with how the 2025 roster looks. It's a situation where you're not forcing David Hamilton to play every day. Hypothetically, I know that he probably would have been the starting second baseman, or I don't know. There could have been a sort of platoon situation. I don't know what the exact situation would be, but instead of that, you have Bregman at second, Devers at third. You have the ability to put Masataka Yoshida in the lineup as at a DH spot. If he stays on the roster, I know that this signing does kind of put his role into question a little bit, because there's just a little bit of an overflow with position players right now. But yeah, I do like that they're thinking about putting him at second, because I think that's probably where the biggest hole on the diamond was, just combined offensively and defensively.
I do think that Bregman at second is a good opening day option. I don't like it as the long-term option, but I really don't think that that's the 3-year plan for the Red Sox in this contract. Rafael Devers was banged up for a lot of last year. He played hurt for the majority of the season, took a couple trips to the IL, and overall just hasn't been a good third baseman for pretty much his entire career outside of 2019. The plan should be to eventually move Devers to DH. The Red Sox of all teams should know that it's okay to have your best player be a DH, a guy that just focuses on hitting regardless of what you're paying him. Um, and I think it'll be easy for Devers to understand that. I don't know what that conversation is going to be like. I don't know if he would be offended to be moving off of third. It's not like he really has anything to prove. He's already gotten the lifetime contract. So who knows what that's going to be like. But I think kind of the first sign of whether it's Devers being injured, if it's Campbell being ready, if it's Campbell being showing himself as a clear everyday player, like I think they're going to kind of just gradually make that transition throughout the season and be like, hey, this is actually just kind of what we're going with now. I think letting Devers be the DH is the smartest thing to do. The Red Sox obviously didn't extend him for $331 million because of his defense. They did it because he can hit and that only. I'd say let him just do that for the rest of his career and let him become a Hall of Famer. Let him reach the big milestones. I don't think there's as good of a chance that happens if he's playing third base and he constantly has to be in his head about fielding.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand that. I think once, the once the ball gets kind of rolling on Christian Campbell and Marcelo Meyer's careers, obviously one of them is going to be put in the infield, and I think Devers would probably be the odd man out, because I don't think they would be ready to put Tristan Casas at DH yet. I think they're just fine with him, even if it's a below average first base. I think they're just fine with him playing first base. And there's really not any other, there's not the Alex Bregman of first base to replace that role. Whereas with Rafael Devers, if he moves to DH, you have a Gold Glove caliber fielder to replace him, who's played that position for almost a decade now at the major league level. But yeah, I guess also to just to provide context on some of the issues that Bregman is helping out. Last year the Red Sox were second to last in infield outs above average, and also they had I think they ranked 20th in weighted runs created plus with among right-handed hitters. They had a 113 weighted runs created plus with lefties, but a 94 weighted runs created plus with righties. And I'm sure Alex Bregman is going to bring that up a little bit. So yeah, like that was kind of the main concern. That's what a lot of people were concerned about with the Red Sox this offseason, was just the imbalance in the lineup. Most of that, most of the most of the good hitters in that lineup, Devers, Casas, if you want to throw Yoshida in there, Yoshida, left-handed hitters, not a lot of great right-handed hitters. With Alex Bregman, that adds at least one right-handed hitter to the mix. And then yeah, just I'm sure that infield defense will not be second to last in outs above average next year, with Bregman playing there potentially every day.
That and if Story stays healthy, which who
Yeah.
knows with that. But I think it's one thing I do want to get into is the what the final numbers were, because Bregman took a lot less money for this deal. I think it was pretty clear throughout the process that he was focused on average annual value more than anything else, because he had 6-year offers on the table from multiple different teams, right? There was a 6-156 from the Astros. There was a 6-171 from the Tigers, according to reports. The Cubs offered like 5 years, I think, and not as much AAV. He went with the short-term deal with the $40 million a year. And I think that's very interesting, because the way that I envision Bregman's thinking is that, okay, he missed out on $50 million because, let's just say $50 million because of this decision. He could have gotten 170, he got 120. If he's going to hit free agency again, let's just say after his age 33 season, he's got another 50 million throughout his career to make up for that. And I think he kind of sees, if I hit free agency again at 34 rather than 37 at the end of a 6-year deal, I think, maybe by the end of career, that could still mean he makes more money on the continuous short-term deals. Because not only that, but if he goes to Detroit, his swing's not going to play there. Not the same way that it would have in Houston or Fenway, or that it did in Houston, or that it would in Fenway. And the Tigers have already seen plenty of miserable contracts come through, whether it be Jordan Zimmerman, Javier Baez, and I don't think Bregman would have ever reached that kind of level. But I mean, they have a lot of young infielders. They would have been committing 6 years to Alex Bregman, who what does that deal look like when he's 30, 36, 37? I don't know. I don't think it's, I mean, it depends on obviously, the team success before that, but, it's very possible that that contract becomes a burden for them. And I think he kind of recognized that and said, I want to, be somewhere where my value is consistently up to par with the performance that I'm putting together. And I think the short-term deal was kind of the best option for that.
Yeah, and I'm sure maybe what helped maybe guide him in that direction was um uh an example, not exactly a parallel, but an example from last year with Matt Chapman, because
Mhm.
he like Bregman, Matt Chapman took a shorter term deal with an opt out after 2024, and he was in his age 31 season, and Bregman is currently in his age 31 season. And what Matt Chapman did is he had probably the best year he's had in 5 years. Best year he's had since pre-pandemic. And the Giants were watched him and they were thinking we want to keep him around long term. And that's what they did. They extended him for 6 years, $151 million. And I'm sure if Bregman can maybe have a resurgence, maybe the best season he's had in 5 years, he can get more than Chapman, because I think there's a little bit more, maybe a little bit more respect or pedigree with Alex Bregman than Matt Chapman by at least maybe a margin. So I think maybe that's part of it, is like very recently a good third baseman maybe took a chance on himself, and it paid off for him. And maybe Bregman's thinking that he could potentially do that, and maybe the Red Sox suit that situation better, considering ballpark and other factors as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, think of it this way. If Bregman were to hit free agency again, coming off of his age 37 season with the Tigers, what does that contract look like? Is there even an offer for another contract? It's hard to tell, obviously, but if you're hitting free agency coming off of your age 33 season with Boston and you have $50 million to make up from what you turned down, that's pretty realistic that that could happen.
Yeah, and sorry if you're repeating yourself. What was the final offer that the Tigers?
It was 6,171, I believe.
So yeah, by the math of it, so he's getting 40 this year. Not technically, I know deferrals are a
Or,
thing
but
in
yeah.
his contract, but he's getting 40 million this year. The Red Sox will eventually end up paying $40 million for 2025. So okay, so if he has a good year and opts out, can he get, the math of it would be, can he get, $131 million or more in the next 5 years? I think that's definitely a possibility if he has another good year in Boston, and he decides to hit the free agent market again. So I think it was just a sort of a calculated risk that he's doing.
I do feel for Detroit in all this. They've obviously been trying to add, a bat, like a middle of the order bat this entire offseason, and Bregman was kind of their last chance to do it. They put the most amount of dollars total on the table, and I think 6,171 is a pretty appropriate offer for Alex Bregman. I think it's around market value, maybe a little higher. Uh, and he chose the AAV. It's quite unfortunate. I don't think there's anything they did wrong except for not offer the AAV contract. I wonder if they could have offered like two different iterations of the contract. That that's me as who's never been an agent and never been involved with these kind of negotiations speaking. I don't think it's common for teams to put out multiple offers at once, but I wonder if they could have put out like a here's the total dollars one and here's the AAV one. You're not, we're not going to give you both in one contract, but whatever you're going for, we're putting both on the table.
Yeah, right. It would be interesting because obviously they're both different and both have their benefits and demerits. But yeah, it's certainly interesting. And yeah, I think this definitely helps the Red Sox. I think yeah, the top I'm trying to envision like what that would look like with the Tigers. I'm sure his offensive production wouldn't be as good, but maybe on a park adjusted level, it would be similar. Because
Hmm.
obviously, looking at like OPS plus and weighted runs created plus, that could kind of stay the same. But yeah. and it probably wouldn't have made. I think honestly, it might not have made sense for him to take a shorter term deal with the Tigers because he might not be able to maximize just his overall
Mhm.
numbers and production there. So a long-term deal might have made more sense, but yeah, I mean, good on the Tigers definitely for putting themselves out there because, um, we don't see it as much from them as some other teams.
Yeah, I mean, Alex Bregman's a guy that's going to carry a reputation with him for the rest of his career, right? He was a member of the 2017 Astros. He was a guy that benefited from the sign stealing scandal, and I don't know how much he thinks about that, if at all. But he was 23 years old when it happened. You and I are both 24 now. Like, I can't imagine trying to stand up to anything like that at our age, given the people that were leading it allegedly, whatever that was. But I would imagine, like, I don't know how much he thinks about his image. I can't imagine it's too much, but I mean, like, he's obviously made himself a very public figure, right? He has a YouTube channel. Like, I remember he filmed a video um a while back where he like went to fast food restaurants and tipped like $100 to the workers at the drive-through. And like, maybe that shows like, hey, this guy wants people to like him. It's probably not that. It's probably just, I'm doing a good thing. And I think, it's hard to say whether that happens, whether when the cameras are off or not. I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he does do the same thing, or that he's the same kind of guy. Not trying to give himself a public presence. But my point being, like, I think there's clearly some sort of uh, care that he has in how he's viewed and what his character is. And obviously, the sign stealing scandal kind of took away from that. And I don't know if he wants to add, being a contract people hated on another fan base.
Right, right. Yeah, that could definitely be a thing. And I mean, the Tigers are in the middle of a 6-year contract of an infielder on the
Yeah,
left
that
side,
exactly.
that everyone hates. So so yeah, yeah, it's interesting. I'm excited to see what happens here in Boston because another benefit of him signing a 3-year deal with opt-outs is you there's no narrative that can be put on of like, oh, now that he's got his long-term deal, he's gonna, go through the motions here. It's not really the case because he can easily have a great year and make a lot more money next year. So that's certainly a benefit for 2025 for the Red Sox.
For me as a Red Sox fan, like, the money feels so much like a non-factor when evaluating this deal. It feels like the last thing that I'm thinking about, honestly.
Yeah, yeah, I can.
Given like, when you're signing that guy to 3 years, like, I don't care how much you're paying him, because I don't think there's any way where I view the contract as a burden over the next 3 years. They're just barely, I think they're like just at the first CBT threshold. Like, it's not gonna, I don't think it's gonna hinder too much spending over the next 3 years.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
If
Exactly.
it hinders spending in 2029, then that's a different story. But that's not a factor in this.
Right, right. And it's not like the Red Sox have really been indulging over the past few years, and this is, another big
Exactly.
contract they have to worry about. It's
Yeah.
really just Devers and Bregman for the most
And
part.
story. Yeah.
Yeah,
Which
and
there's another. We have what, another 3 years on that one.
yeah, another 3 years on that, another 3 years on Yoshida.
Yeah. Like, who? Yeah. They have the only players they've committed to beyond 2028 are Devers, and then Cedon Rafaela and Brian Bayo, which are both, pre-arb signed contracts that are going to be not a factor at all when considering, like, oh, do these contracts hinder us to spend more? Like, those are not even going to be considered.
Yeah, it's another thing that I love about it is the Red Sox can still remain flexible despite this deal, and you know they they're signing a guy for age 31 to 33. That's not an opportunity you get often. Usually a guy of Bregman's caliber, you have to sign him into his mid 30s, and rightfully
Mhm.
so. But um, I guess unfortunately for Bregman, that's not the case. Unfortunately for the Red Sox, that's the case. Um,
This makes the AL East a lot more fun, in my opinion. Like, this
yeah, I
division
mean,
is so up for grabs now.
yeah, for sure, for sure. It was close enough last year because no one really. Um, No one really
No one
stole
really
like,
ran away with it. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. Those are the words I was looking for. Like Yankees led
they
by
won
3
94
games.
games. Yeah,
Orioles are obviously going to remain a contender. I think the Rays can have a little bit of a bounce back season, considering some of the pitchers they're getting back. And then yeah, the Red Sox, went 500 last year, and they've really only added. I mean, they lost Tyler O'Neill, but I'm trying to think. Haven't lost much at the major league level this past
hmm
offseason. Um, but
Nick
yeah,
Pivetta.
yeah, Nick Pivetta, innings eater somewhat, or not
Yeah,
not really even an innings eater,
had
but
the I believe he has the most innings pitched for the team in the 2020s,
nice, nice. That's like
which sounds about right.
that's what Tim Wakefield would do. Like he'd have like crazy innings and wins numbers. ERA was never that low, but he always made his starts, and that's what Nick Pivetta did.
He did.
Um, but
Sometimes he pitched out of the bullpen, and he was really good in those roles.
yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, but yeah, anything more on the Alex Bregman deal?
No, let's. I think we've transitioned very smoothly here into the other free agent acquisition that happened this week, the other multi-year deal that was signed.
Yeah, Nick Pivetta signs for 4 years, 55 million. Unfortunately, I never actually like looked into the details of it. But are there opt-outs after this? After this?
After the years 2 and 3, I believe. Yeah,
Okay, so he's guaranteed to be there. You know, assuming no trade, he's
yeah. It's
guaranteed to
it's a
be there
front.
this year and next year.
It's a very weirdly structured contract. He's getting 2.5 million this year, 20 million in 2026, 14 million, 18 million.
Yeah, maybe. The Padres do have one of the highest payrolls in baseball, and
That and they're also dealing with a ton of owner turmoil right now with the whole Seidler family feud that's happening.
yeah, right,
So my
exactly.
guess is like, hey, let's worry about this money later down the line.
Yeah, right, right, right. And like King and Cease are both in their last year of arbitration. Arise is in his last year, so there's potential for some stuff to be cleared up next year. But yeah, Nick Pivetta, he's been a guy. He's been a pitcher for the Red Sox in his career. I can definitely say the Red Sox won the trade. Um,
Mhm.
the Nick Pivetta trade where Brandon Workman and Heath Hembry were shipped over. But yeah, with the Red Sox, he had a 4.29 ERA and 4.18 FIP. Um, really, really good strikeout numbers. He just always has had trouble with the long ball. But is he's been able to consistently make starts, and that's kind of the value that he provides.
I do think this is actually quite a solid move for the Padres. I mean, 4 years is definitely a little aggressive. It's kind of like it reminds me of the Nick Martinez contract that they signed a couple of years ago. That was also a 4 year deal. That kind of came out of left field, but he was decent for them. I think Nick Pivetta could. I think moving to Petco Park could do wonders for Nick Pivetta because, like you mentioned, he's always struggled with the long ball. The strikeout and walk numbers have always been there. His strikeout rate has hovered around 30% for each of the last couple of years. The walk rate's gotten lower as time has gone on as well. Um, and he fills a very necessary spot in the rotation that has kind of had some in and outgoing names, right? The two best starters in this rotation are set to be free agents after this year, and I can't imagine the Padres are going to retain either of them. I mean, who knows? But uh, given the fact that they're under new ownership now, things could change very drastically. And maybe we're looking at Nick Pivetta as the number two in this rotation by the time we're doing this evaluation next year. Honestly, I'd say he's probably, if the deal was signed earlier, I might have put him as a player to watch for the Padres.
Yeah, right, right, right. Because there is like it's really just kind of one missing piece for him, and it's just home run prevention. Because I'm looking at the stats. I'm gonna be looking at the stats now. Out of the 79 pitchers to throw 250 plus innings over the last 2 years, Nick Pivetta ranks fifth in strikeout minus walk rate. However, his issue is home runs. He also has the seventh highest home runs per nine. So, if there's a way that he can prevent um, that he can prevent home runs, he can really be an elite pitcher based
Yeah,
on.
I mean, I will say the home run issues have been worse, especially last year away from Fenway. Um, he gave up a lot more home runs on the road than he did at home this past year, at least. But regardless, I mean, he had a 3.51 expected ERA last year compared to a 4.14 ERA. Um, but I think, yeah, no, maybe it's just a change of scenery. Maybe it's working with new pitching staffs, maybe working with new coaches. I think there's some improvement that can very much be made just with the team change for Nick Pivetta.
Yeah, and definitely part of that has to do with he has had above a 32% fly ball rate each of the last 2 years.
Hmm.
Um, and maybe it's not,
Which, I mean, he throws his four seamer nearly 50% of the time. That's kind of going to happen.
yeah, it's probably not, mutually exclusive that whatever is getting him, um, you know, strikeouts is also allowing him home runs because, we've seen it with certain pitchers who, have very effective four seam fastballs and tend to use it a lot, like Garrett Cole, maybe, Justin Verlander at points. They'll often have really high strikeout rates, but sometimes their home run rates will skyrocket and it'll cause their, overall numbers to falter a little bit. So I think with Nick Pivetta, it's kind of an extreme case with that. Um, but yeah, I'm interested to see what San Diego does with him, and try to maybe sacrifice some of the strikeouts for some of the home runs. But yeah, I don't know. It'll be, if he does end up really improving, I wouldn't be too surprised considering how effective he is with strikeouts and walks. Um, but yeah, anything more on the Pavetta signing?
No, I think that's kind of bad. People did wonder if there was if this could have meant an incoming Dylan Cease trade. They're getting a pitcher, shipping one out, whatever. And I know that there are teams that have appeared interested. I don't really see why it would mean that. I know the Padres are coming off of probably the worst offseason in their division. The Dodgers have gotten better, the Giants have gotten better, the Diamondbacks have gotten better, and Nick Pivetta is really the first. I think he's the first major league free agent that the Padres have signed this offseason, and really the only addition that they've made to the big league club. So, but regardless, I still think that they view themselves and should view themselves as a competitive team next year. This is a team that made the playoffs last year. Even if the record didn't support it, like in terms of talent and potential, you could see as maybe the second best team in the National League, and with a potential bounce back season from Fernando Tatis Jr., with maybe a healthier season for Manny Machado, and then a better season, an improved season from Dylan Cease, Michael King, adding Nick Pivetta. Like, this is still very much a competitive team. I don't really see why you would ship out one of your top starting pitchers given the situation that you have. I know that the division's very tough, but this is still a really talented team. If you're going to trade Dylan Cease, I would say do it at the trade deadline if you're out of the contention, because I would argue that you'd probably get more for Dylan Cease at the trade deadline than you would right now, right? Like, we're in spring training right now. Teams are at camp. I'd say we've probably been at a point for close to a month now where every team has kind of had an idea of what their big league roster looks like on opening day. And I can't imagine there's too many teams that really desperately want to add another starting pitcher to the top of their rotation right now. But I can guarantee you'd find something like that at the trade deadline. I guarantee you there will be some team at the deadline, maybe multiple, that are like, you know what, let's go get Dylan Cease, whatever it takes, we'll do it. I don't think you're going to see that kind of determination, that kind of desperation at this point. So if you're going to trade Dylan Cease, wait till you're out of contention and do it at the deadline. I know that, logistically it doesn't make sense that you're getting more giving up 2 months of Dylan Cease versus 1 year, but that's how these teams act. They act a lot more desperate. Some of them do, at least at the trade deadline. And I think the Padres could benefit from that. They've been kind of the team on the other end in many recent years where they've given up big hauls in July for players, but uh, I don't really see why you would trade him right now.
Yeah, the whole thing with the how the Padres have run their organization the past few years, it does interest me because it's been a little bit of a retooling, and they've never quite rebuilt or and they nor like built up, I guess, because yeah, think about like when they got rid of, Juan Soto last year. I think they still plan to be pretty competitive, and luckily for them, they got Michael King out of that, who ended up being very productive for them. I'm not saying they necessarily won the trade, but it didn't end up being a disaster for them. It could be the same situation with Dylan Cease, where maybe they trade someone and still try to get some good quality major league talent back. I don't know if I would agree with it, because yeah, I definitely agree that they are one of the better teams in the National League. And they were, I think they were the best, over the last 3 months of the year, they were maybe the best team in baseball. I expect some of that to lead into 2025. But yeah, like um I don't really, I don't know if I would agree with, not putting kind of all hands on deck for this year, because it's a really talented team. They went to five with the Dodgers last year and haven't changed that much. I think like along, they haven't really added anybody, but I think they only lost like Ha-Sung Kim. Yeah, they
So
lost
far,
three. They lost Profar, Kim,
Tanner
uh,
Scott.
Tanner Scott. But Tanner Scott wasn't there the whole year last year, and they were able to do
Yeah.
well without him.
Kyle
Um,
Higashioka, I guess.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I still think they can do really well this year, and I don't know if I would agree with them sacrificing some of that talent this year.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that.
Yeah. But yeah, anything more on the Pavetta deal?
Nope.
All right. And yeah, speaking of starting pitchers, we have our ninth top 10 list. First time highlighting pitchers, as we've done all of the position players so far. That was not intentional. That was just how the randomizer list, I think listrandomizer.com, if they need the promo, that's what they gave to us. But yeah, we are ranking the top 10 starting pitchers this week, which is very, very hard because there's so many of them and there's so many good ones.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, if for context, um, this is based on what we think they will do for 2025. So we're kind of ranking based, you know, along with past performance, we're just kind of going based off potential, and maybe how we think they're going to trend based on how young or old they are, or certain underlying trends that we saw, like ground ball rate, strikeout rate, uh, walk rate, average exit velocity against, things like that. Because yeah, it's obviously not all about just the innings and the ERA and whatnot. Especially when talking about someone for the future. That's why those underlying numbers exist. Yeah, FIP and expected ERA are probably gonna be brought up in this segment. But yeah, I think that's all the housekeeping I have. Yeah, do you want to reveal your number 10 starting pitcher in Major League Baseball?
I would love to. And for number 10, I'm actually sticking with the Padres, mentioning a guy that I was just talking about. I'm talking about Michael King, who is my number 10 starter, cracking my top 10 this year. By the way, because this list is so hard, I actually went ahead and made a top 20,
Hmm.
just so I made sure I was considering everyone that I really believed was worthy of being on this list. Um, Michael King did make the cut for me, though. The reason why, it may be a surprising pick, but he has been a top 10 starting pitcher the entire time that he's been in the role. He made his first start of kind of the transition into being a starter last year on August 24th of 2023. He started, I believe, 8 games for the Yankees at the end of the season. And since then, he ranks tied for eighth in starting pitcher FWAR with 5.3. So kind of justifying my pick there. I mean, the entire time that he's been a starting pitcher by FWAR, he's been a top 10 starting pitcher. So he is, like I said, cracking the list for me. And what I love most about him, and it shows very clearly when you look at his Baseball Savant page, is the contact that he gets against him. Very weak contact, an average exit velocity of 85.7 miles per hour, a hard hit rate of 30.3%. I love any starting pitcher that gets consistent weak contact, because at that point, as long as you're not giving up too many line drives, the batted balls don't really matter. I talk about fly balls a lot. I talk about pulled fly balls a lot. If you're giving up fly balls that are hit 89 miles an hour, it doesn't matter where you're hitting the ball unless it's like, the pesky pull corner at Fenway or the short porch at Yankee Stadium, maybe the Crawford boxes in Houston. For the most part, it's going to stay in the yard, and that's kind of what's happened with Michael King. Opponents, like I mentioned, had an 89.4 mile per hour average exit velocity on line drives and fly balls last year against Michael King, the lowest among the 199 pitchers with at least 100 line drives and fly balls allowed last year. And it was also the second lowest average exit velocity against on the 745 seasons since 2015 with at least 200 line drives and fly balls allowed. The only other season to produce a lower average exit velocity on fly balls and line drives, minimum 200 of them, was 2015 Jake Arrieta. And if you remember correctly, he was pretty good. He won the Cy Young Award and had an ERA below 2, which was pretty awesome. And on top of that, the strikeout numbers are still there, 27% last year, a whiff rate near 30, a chase rate above 30. There's really nothing that he doesn't do very well, which is just really cool to see him break out into such an effective starter immediately. Even doing it as a sinker baller, that's pretty impressive as well. All of the secondaries work very well for him. His changeup has a 36% whiff rate, or he had a 36% whiff rate last year, and an average exit velocity of 81.5 miles per hour as well. So with that being said, Michael King is debuting this list for me. He is making the number 10 spot.
So yeah, my number 10, I think, people might overlook this guy a little bit because, he wasn't on the mound as much as kind of we desired last year. But I'm kind of sticking with my guns on Yoshinobu Yamamoto. He was my number 8 starting pitcher heading into 2024. He's heading into his age 26 season. And yeah, he really didn't do anything for me to demote his case last year, other than get injured. And granted, it was an arm injury, but I think it was, it was surgically repaired, and I don't foresee it being an issue. And obviously, I'm not a sports doctor, so I can only know so much. But he threw 90 innings last year, and he put up a flat 3 ERA and a 2.61 FIP. Among 140 pitchers with 90 plus innings last year, Yamamoto ranked 5th in FIP, 12th in strikeout rate, and 12th in strikeout minus walk rate. And although he missed time with an injury last year, he threw 170 plus innings each of the previous 3 years in Japan, which is why I'm not really as concerned about the health. Just, it would be easy to be concerned about it considering his only year in MLB, he had an issue, but he threw 170 plus innings each of the previous 3 years in professional baseball. And yeah, I'm definitely leaving some guys off the list who have a much more proven track record. There's definitely some guys who have thrown a lot more innings and had a lot more pedigree over the last few years. But I do have a lot of faith in what Yamamoto did in that small sample size in those 90 innings. And I see potential for him to, keep that going and maybe even get even better. Because yeah, there's a reason why, the Dodgers gave $325 million to this guy. He does show a lot of potential and a lot of talent. And we saw glimpses of that last year. So yeah, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, he's my number 10. Who is your number 9?
Yeah, number 9, I'm going with one of 2 returners that I have from my starting pitcher list last year. That's probably not a good thing for my list from last year, but I'm actually going with the same guy that I put at number 9 last year. My opinions of him have not changed. Talking about Tyler Glasnow from the Los Angeles Dodgers, who, pitched a career high, I believe, in innings pitched last year with 134. Something that we talked a lot about was, maybe that now that he's off the Rays, we can see him get a little more time on the mound. We did last year, although that doesn't mean he didn't, miss some time. He only made 22 starts last year. But in those 22 starts, he had a 3.49 ERA and a 2.90 FIP, which is just about identical to the FIP that he had in 2023, the year in which I picked him as the year that he was coming off of when I picked him as my Cy Young Award winner last year. And just about everything that's under the hood that you can like about Glasnow, it's there. Not only does he strike out a lot of batters, not only does he keep few guys off of the bases because of walks, but he also has a lot of ground balls, and you don't see that from a lot of pitchers these days, a 48.3% ground ball rate. The average for the league is around 44%, and that 4% does matter between him and the average, especially given the fact that his four-seam fastball actually gives him a pretty relatively good ground ball rate. It only had a 15-degree launch angle last year, which is low by pitch standards. And on top of that, the secondaries are just unreal. His slider had a opponent's batting average of 200 and an opponent's slugging of 333 last year, an average exit velocity of 87.3% and a 40% whiff rate. And the curveball was even more special, an 098 opponent's batting average with a 115 expected batting average, a 174 slugging with a 170 expected slugging, a 0-degree average launch angle, and a 47.5% whiff rate. Again, Glasnow had a 43% whiff rate and 52% ground ball rate on breaking balls in 2024. That's me talking again about that slider and that curveball. And that whiff rate, the 43%, ranked first among the 53 pitchers with at least 750 breaking balls thrown. And the ground ball rate was seventh among the 80 pitchers with at least 100 batted balls on breaking balls. So, he has some really special talents, among the best in the league in terms of breaking balls. The fastball is also very good. I mean, a 21% whiff rate. Along with that, he gets good extension on his pitches that gives him perceived velocity on top of the good velocity that he already has. Just about everything in his arsenal is pretty lethal. And, when he's on the mound, he is one of the best. So Tyler Glasnow is staying on this list for me. He is in my number 9 spot, same place that I had him last year.
Yeah. Certainly interested in what he can do if he does accomplish that full season. My number 9 is someone who was not on my list last year. It is Corbin Burns. He is heading into his age 30 season, and I left him off the list last year, which was kind of against the grain. I think most people who put out a top 10 starting pitcher list had Corbin Burns in their top 10. I know MLB Network did, and you did, and Foolish Bailey had him, I think, top 20 for players overall. But I did not have him on the list, and I was concerned about really steep declines in strikeout and whiff rate. However, the strikeout rate did keep declining last year, but he is showing that he can perform well without elite strikeout numbers. And part of why a lot of why I have him on the list is also just because of his general workload. He ranks third in innings over the last 3 years, and also among the 21 pitchers who have thrown 350 plus innings over the last 2 years, he ranks second in ERA. And among the 40 pitchers with 5,000 plus pitches thrown, his expected WOBA against ranks third, average exit velocity against ranks second, and barrel rate against ranks first. The average exit velocity and barrel rate specifically really stand out to me because, if you're not going to have an elite strikeout rate, you got to make sure that your contact against you is very low, the quality of contact against you is very poor. And that's exactly what Corbin Burns has. Their hitters are not able to hit the ball very hard off of him, nor are they able to hit very many hard fly balls off of him. And that's just a great quality that he's shown over a large workload. And also, out of the 70 pitchers with 750 plus batted balls against over the last 2 years, Corbin Burns has the second lowest sweet spot rate against. He does tend to get more ground balls, more pop-ups than average, and is able to keep hitters from getting those optimal launch angles that get the hits. So yeah, Corbin Burns, I'm sure that I don't know if he'll rank like top 10 in ERA, top 10 in FIP this upcoming year, but I do think just his overall workload will be in the top 10. Or overall production will be in the top 10 because he's consistently thrown. I think he's thrown 190 innings each of the last 3 years, and has maintained some very quality performance as well. So yeah, I have him in just because of his general production and consistency over the last 3 years, at least in terms of ERA. Who do you have at number 8?
Yeah, number 8, I'm talking about a guy that had some success in 2023 and a little bit of a shorter sample size, but really backed it up with another great season last year and a full season's worth of work. Talking about Cole Reagans from the Kansas City Royals, a new recipient of a $13 million extension covering some pre-arb and arb years. So he's been in the news lately, and he is staying in the news, making the number 8 spot on my top 10 list. Cole Reagans has really become the ace that people were hoping to see him become, when he had some success in 2023. He backed it up with, just like I said, another phenomenal season in 2024. He had a 3.14 ERA, a 3.31 expected ERA, very good strikeout numbers, very good contact against as well. An average exit velocity of 88 miles per hour, which is, right in line with league average, a little bit better than that. Additionally, for a guy that throws a lot of four-seamers, 41% to be exact, a 41% ground ball rate, although below league average, is still pretty good. Additionally, he had a 23% whiff rate on that four-seamer, which is solid. Some of the secondaries also complemented very nicely, specifically his changeup. His changeup was the second most thrown pitch in his arsenal last year. It had a 47.8% whiff rate and an 81 mile per hour average exit velocity. That whiff rate was the highest among the 360 pitches that were thrown at least 500 times last year, and the average exit velocity was the second lowest. So the changeup in two different aspects was one of the best of any pitch thrown in 2024. Additionally, since he made his Royals debut in July of 2023, Cole Reagans ranks third among all starting pitchers with 7.3 Fangraphs wins above replacement. So in terms of that, he's been one of the best. He's also been great with availability like the rest of his team. 186 innings pitched last year, coming from a guy that had never pitched a full season before that. I think that's a pretty incredible workload for a guy with, just getting into that kind of rhythm. Like I said, and while doing so, maintaining a near 30% strikeout rate and above 30% whiff rate, a near 30% chase rate, not giving up hard contact. There's a lot of excellent things that he did in such a huge sample size last year. And I think the 186 innings is a lot of the reason why I have him on my team. He's a guy that went out there and made 33 starts last year, 32 starts last year, and prove that he really is the guy that we saw him as in those flashes in 2023. So he's making the cut for me this year. Cole Reagans ranks at number 8 for me.
Yeah. He's certainly impressed this past year and kind of solidified his status. My number 8 is my number 5 from last year. It is Logan Webb. He is heading into his age 28 season, and I think it's appropriate that him and Burns are back to back because I kind of have similar expectations for them, and I'm putting them on the list for very similar reasons. And with Logan Webb, I do think of this 10 that I'm talking about, of these 10 pitchers, I think he will have the worst rate statistics, but I think he gets on this list due to his workload coupled with very quality performance. He leads all pitchers in innings over the last 2 years and the last 3 years. And among qualified pitchers over the last 2 years, he ranks 8th in ERA, 2nd in FIP, and 2nd in FWAR and BWAR overall. No matter innings minimums and whatnot. I guess a concern from this past year would be his expected ERA was in the 34th percentile last year. But similar to hitters, got to look at the pulled fly ball rate, and he had a 17% rate of fly balls being pulled against him, which is the lowest rate of among the 91 pitchers with 100 plus fly balls against them last year. And among 120 pitchers with 150 plus fly balls against them over the last 2 years, Webb has the 4th lowest rate. And especially at Oracle Park, if you're hitting it to those deep gaps, you're going to have a tough time hitting home runs. And that's where Logan Webb has been having his hitters hit those fly balls at a pretty disproportionate rate, which is why, maybe he's outperforming his expected metrics by a little bit. However, yeah, he moves down this list a little bit. I mentioned he was my number 5 last year because his ground ball rate and strikeout rate went down, and his walk rate also went up. However, those numbers were kind of around that level in 2022, and in that year he put up a 2.90 ERA and 3.03 FIP that year. So even with those underlying numbers, he's been able to have really good success with that, and that's just with those numbers. That's banking on them not improving. So yeah, Logan Webb, he's just he is the biggest workhorse in baseball as it stands right now, and he also does a really good job at preventing runs and putting together good underlying numbers as well. So he gets on my list at number 8. Who do you have at number 7?
Yeah, number 7, maybe I'm being a little bit ambitious with this pick. He's only coming off of his first season as a starter, but I mean, it's too good to ignore what we saw out of Garrett Crochet last year. He's making this list at my number 7 spot, switching his socks from white to red this year, getting traded to Boston for quite a hefty haul, and there's a good reason for it. I mean, 146 innings and 209 strikeouts last year, strikeout rate above 35%, additionally a chase rate and a whiff rate both above 30%. He joined Chris Sale and Tarek Skubal last year as the only pitchers, qualified pitchers, to have a chase rate, whiff rate, and strikeout rate above 30%. All of them were above 33% for him. He's kind of almost like Chris Sale too, not just in the arc of getting traded from the Red Sox, from the White Sox to the Red Sox, but a lefty pitcher with big strikeout numbers, kind of following that arc. And just to give you an idea of what those strikeout numbers look like, in case you aren't already aware, all 5 of the pitches he threw last year had a whiff rate above 30%. The lowest of any of them was his four-seamer at 31%. The most was his sweeper at 42%. So no matter what he was throwing at you, there was a pretty good chance you were going to swing and miss at it. On top of that, the average exit velocity was solid. It was below the major league average. He was also getting really good extension on already really good velocity. Kind of being a little more deceptive, obviously leading to those more strikeouts. 9.6% of total pitches that were thrown by Garrett Crochet in 2024 were in the strike zone and swung and missed at. That was the highest rate among the 170 pitchers with at least 1,250 pitches thrown last year. It was also the highest of the 680 seasons since 2008 by a left-hander with at least 1,500 pitches in a season. Yeah, the classic 1,500 inning season back in the 1800s that we all know and love, where people were striking out 13 batters per 9. Yeah, it was just a ridiculous year for him. Definitely very much out of left field, but it's too good to ignore for me. Garrett Crochet is making the list for me in my number 7 spot.
Yeah, and for the first time today, we are talking about the same player in the episode, and it is Garrett Crochet is also my number 7.
Cool.
And yeah, I kind of feel the same way about you, which is why I put him in the exact same place. Just an overview: he's heading into his age 26 season, and last year, out of 81 pitchers with 140 plus innings pitched, he ranked 4th in expected ERA, 3rd in FIP, 1st in strikeout rate, strikeout minus walk rate, xFIP, and SIERA. He was also 93rd percentile in chase rate and whiff rate, and his differences in ERA and FIP, I know, his ERA was 3.58, his FIP was 2.85. Part of that can be explained by a 3.18 BABIP against, which was the 6th highest out of 81. So I expect his ERA to be a lot closer. I expect it to be in the 2s rather than the 3s this upcoming year, just based on the underlying numbers, based on what FIP and expected ERA are telling us. And I think maybe some people might have concern about his workload. He's never really had a full season as an unlimited starter, but I'm not really too concerned about it. He threw 146 innings last year, but before the White Sox started limiting his pitch count, he threw 5.5 innings per start, and then after they started limiting him, he only threw about 3 innings per start. So if they kind of just let him go, and I'm not saying it was the wrong decision, but hypothetically, if they just let him go, he would have qualified for the ERA title and all the fun stuff there. So I'm not really concerned about the innings quite yet. And yeah, last thing I'll say, I think I look at his 2024 in a somewhat loosely similar manner as I do Tarek Skubal's 2023. If Tarek Skubal threw 80 innings that year and showed really great signs, especially under the surface, and then he went on to win the Cy Young in 2024. I see potential for that with Garrett Crochet based on what he showed us in 146 innings last year. So yeah, I have high expectations for him, and he makes my number 7. Who do you have at number 6?
Yeah, at number 6, I'd like Cole Reagan's another guy that had success in 2023 and then doubled down on it in 2024. And because of it, got a nice payday for himself. I'm talking about my second Dodgers pitcher of the episode, talking about Blake Snell, who I am putting in my number 6 spot, coming off of signing a 5-year, $182 million contract. Yeah, he only threw 104 innings last year, but that's also pretty astonishing considering he only made 20 starts. There were 2 major criticisms of Blake Snell that people had following his Cy Young season. One of them being that he doesn't pitch deep into games. One of them being that he has a high walk rate. And while the walk rate can still be lowered quite considerably, it went down nearly 3% last year, going from 13.3% to 10.5%. On top of that, the strikeout rate increased by a relatively similar percent. It went up 3.2%. And in terms of the inning stuff, he threw a no-hitter last year, a 9-inning no-hitter. He completed 7 innings 4 times, and he completed 6 innings 10 times out of 20 starts. Half the time he pitched, he completed 6. That is quite remarkable considering where he was at with this kind of discourse last year. I mean, he kind of proved everyone wrong on the things that people doubted him for, and deservingly got the contract that he had been after for a couple of years now. 257 expected ERA, a 178 expected batting average against. Like I mentioned, very good strikeout numbers, a 37% whiff rate, a 28.9% hard hit rate as well. He also gave up, some of the best in terms of soft contact, like I talked about with Michael King earlier. Blake Snell is that, but with even better strikeout numbers. So there's a lot to be very happy about with what we saw out of him. Between his curveball, his changeup, and his slider, which are his 3 secondaries, he was the only pitcher in all of baseball to have at least 3 pitches that he threw at least 150 times that had a whiff rate at or above 40%, which is quite astonishing. And by the way, they weren't scraping the surface of that. His curveball that he threw 462 times had a 49.8% whiff rate. It was near 50. His changeup that he threw 311 times had a 47.6% whiff rate. And his slider, which he threw 178 times, had a 44.6% whiff rate. So it wasn't just scratching the surface of that 40%. In addition, 57.6% of plate appearances against Blake Snell last year ended with either a strikeout or a batted ball below 85 miles per hour. So almost 60% of the time you were either whiffing or you were getting a small piece of it. So I really liked what I saw out of Blake Snell last year. I was skeptical last year, like a lot of people, but he really won me over last year. And I now see him as a top 6 pitcher in the game.
My number 6 pitcher is someone who we haven't seen very much of recently. But I do have faith that, if he can just stay there, stay on that rubber, he will be the 6th most productive pitcher on this list. And I'm talking about Jacob deGrom of the Texas Rangers. Jacob deGrom is heading into his age 37 season. He's coming off Tommy John surgery. He got back on the mound for 10 innings last year. And yeah, I think injuries have definitely fogged people's memories on how truly great he is. Because when he is on the mound, he is the best pitcher in the world. Yes, he hasn't pitched a full season since 2019, but among the 308 pitchers with 200 plus innings pitched since the start of 2020, he leads in strikeout minus walk rate and FIP. And by the way, that strikeout minus walk rate is 37%, and that FIP is 180. I think the average for strikeout minus walk rate is 14%. Average for FIP is, around 4. He's at 37% and 180. And he also ranks third in ERA among those 308 pitchers with 200 plus innings pitched, and first among starters with 200 plus innings pitched since the start of 2020. Concerning the injuries, his elbow issue started in 2021, which is when he stopped consistently making his starts. And that lingered until he got Tommy John surgery in 2023. It's not it hasn't been like a Mike Trout type situation where he's gotten injured in a lot of different places, and he just seems to be very injury prone right now. It was always an elbow issue with Jacob deGrom, and it didn't get the ultimate solution for it until 2023. And now that his elbow is fixed, I expect him to get a decent workload. I expect him to throw like 100 plus innings. Maybe maybe like 150. I don't know, but I do expect him to throw a lot more innings than he has the past 2-3 years. And when he did return last year, I mentioned he threw 10 innings. He threw 10 and 2/3 innings pitched. He put up a 1.69 ERA, 2.32 FIP, a 30% strikeout minus walk rate, and a 97.3 mile per hour average fastball velocity. So I do believe, based off that and what we saw in the brief parts of 2023 and 2022, I do believe that when he is on the mound, he is the best pitcher in the world. It's just a matter of him getting on the mound, and I think he'll get on the mound a bit more than he has in the past. So, and just based on like it's such a huge risk to not put him on, considering, if he does throw 150 innings, he's probably going to be in Cy Young contention. So yeah, I have Jacob deGrom at number 6. Who do you have at number 5?
At number 5, I have the reigning National League Cy Young Award winner from the Atlanta Braves. I'm talking about Chris Sale. We didn't just see a Chris Sale resurgence in 2024. We saw the full return of peak Chris Sale, the guy that he was in his last few years with the White Sox and his first couple of years with the Red Sox. We saw that guy come back to the mound for the Atlanta Braves. The change of scenery seemed to really suit him very well. We saw the 30% strikeout rate, the low average exit velocity, everything that we've always loved about Chris Sale, we got to see in full once again in 2024. It was actually the first year throughout his major league career, the second year in his major league career where his slider was the most thrown pitch in his arsenal. It was at 40% last year, the highest that it's been in any year of his career. And that's obviously what he made himself famous for, was throwing that slider and having nasty movement, getting a lot of whiffs on it. And just to give you an idea of how nasty that slider still is in Chris Sale's age 35 season, he threw 323 sliders last year with at least 50 inches of drop and 10 inches of glove side movement. That means horizontal and vertical movements. No one else in Major League Baseball threw more than 48 of such sliders. Chris Sale threw 323 of them. So it was just, in terms of the consistency and the movement, no one else was even in the same stratosphere as Chris Sale last year. And his secondary pitch was his four-seamer, another pitch that he's used as a primary for himself in the last couple of seasons. He had a 37.5% ground ball rate on his four-seamer last year, the highest that he's had in any full season. So not only is he, getting this weak contact, getting these strikeouts, but he's even getting more ground balls, a 46% ground ball rate last year, kind of in line, a little bit more in line with what he had been doing previously. So love to see that out of him, obviously. And yeah, it was very cool to see that return to the mound, kind of seeing the Chris Sale of old and everything that we had always grown to know about him. Obviously, it had been a very long road back through multiple different injuries through Tommy John. And yeah, he is officially back, and he is back into his prime. He's kind of having he kind of started a second prime last year. We'll see if it continues, but I have him as my number 5 starter going into next year.
At my number 5, is another newcomer to my list. By the way, I forgot to mention Garrett Crochet and Jacob deGrom were both newcomers to my list, kind of, I guess, implied. I don't know if anyone had them in their lists last year, But Cole Reagans is also another newcomer, and he is my number 5 on this list. He is heading into his age 27 season, and since being acquired by the Royals in July of 2023, he has a flat 3 ERA and a 2.85 FIP in 258 innings pitched. And among 40 qualified starters in that span, his ERA ranks 4th, and FIP, strikeout rate, and home runs per 9 all rank 2nd. And yeah, he finished 4th in the AL Cy Young last year. I don't really have much else analysis. I think the numbers really speak for themselves. The Royals kind of were able to just redirect him and put him in the right direction, and it's made him one of the best pitchers in baseball for the last year and a half. So yeah, that's why I put him there, especially as someone on the younger side. I just kind of expect that to continue this upcoming year, and he's definitely a Cy Young candidate for 2025. So yeah, Cole Reagans is my number 5. Who do you have at number 4?
So for my number 4 starter, it's a guy that you already touched on, and I don't really have much else to add because I think there's a clear narrative with him, and you said it perfectly. I'm talking about Jacob deGrom, who, yeah, I'm still putting as a top 4 starter in baseball this year. Yeah, I mean, I think we all know, I think no one's really denying that Jacob deGrom has the talent to be the number 4, at least best starter in baseball next year. It's really just a matter of does he stay on the field long enough to make that happen. I feel pretty optimistic about it. And I think people should be reminded that, even in the limited amount of time that we've seen Jacob deGrom over the last couple of seasons, he's been the guy that we all know. In the time that Jacob deGrom has spent with the Rangers, albeit not a lot of time, he has a 34.1% K rate minus walk rate, which ranks 2nd highest among the 596 pitchers with at least 40 innings pitched over the last 2 seasons. In the brief time that we saw him last year, we saw everything that we know and love: a 31.8% strikeout rate, a 2.3% walk rate, a 2.51 expected ERA. Yeah, I'm very optimistic to see his return to the mound full time next year. I'm hoping that we can really see that full season of peak Jacob deGrom, because we really, I guess 2018, but there's still so much of him that's even gotten better since 2018. I really just want to see what that looks like over a full season. He would probably be my number 1 if I really anticipated as a lock that he would be on the mound for at least enough innings to qualify. But I can't say that for certain. He is my number 4, though, because I still think there's a lot of excitement with him coming back on the mound.
Yeah, I think from both of us on an inning per inning basis, Jacob deGrom is probably number 1 for us. It's just,
yes,
will he get the innings? And yeah, just to go back, that's why I have, Corbin Burnes and Logan Webb on, is yeah, sure. There's definitely some guys I left off the list that I think are going to do better on an inning per inning basis, but I'll take, Webb and Burnes's production along with the 30 innings that I expect them to have over some of the competition that I left off. And yeah, I guess that goes against deGrom as well. And speaking of that, my number 4 is Chris Sale, the reigning National League Cy Young winner. He was not on my list last year. He's heading into his age 36 season, and in his first time qualifying for the ERA title in 7 years, he led MLB in ERA, FIP, strikeout rate, strikeout minus walk rate, and home runs per 9. He was also 92nd percentile or higher in expected ERA, average exit velocity against, chase rate, strikeout rate, and hard hit rate. And yeah, I guess part of the reason why I don't have him higher is, that was his first really good and productive year in 6 years. It had been since 2018 since he was pitching like that, and also pitching that many innings. And also, I guess a little bit of a concern is he did get hurt at the end of the year. Not that that injury might, continue into this year. It's just he did show there were some signs that, maybe the injury stuff isn't, something that's completely behind us. So, you don't know how many innings, you never know how many innings you're going to get with Chris Sale. But based on the fact that he led all of Major League Baseball in all the important categories last year, I do have to put him pretty high because yeah, there's no reason with his pitching for me to doubt him too much. So yeah, I have him at number 4, and yeah, if he repeats success, even though he's on the older side, he probably moves up a little bit higher. Who do you have at number 3?
At number 3, I have my second and final returner to this list from my top 10 starting pitcher list from last year. This guy was actually my number 1 starting pitcher last year, and it's not that he had a down year. He had exactly the year I was hoping he would have. There just happens to be 2 more that I just decided to put above him this year. I'm talking about the ever reliable Zach Wheeler, who has become a guy that we really might have to start talking about Hall of Fame with. I mean, it obviously is going to take a few more seasons. I don't think he's there right now, but he's maybe like 2 or 3 seasons of this caliber away from we need to have this serious discussion. Has he done enough? Is this like the Adrian Beltre arc where he just has a Hall of Fame 30s? And because he has been the best pitcher in the league. Chris, you love talking about Jose Ramirez, and he's led the league in F WAR in this many years. Well, Zach Wheeler has led all pitchers in F WAR since 2023, 2022, 2021, 2020, 2019, and 2018. He has been the best pitcher in the league for the last 7 seasons now, and he has not really shown many signs of stopping in the recent past. Last year, he put up a 2.80 expected ERA, the second best for him in any season. He's still giving up low average exit velocities. He's still striking out a lot of guys, even at age 34. I know that's not terribly old, but it feels like he's been doing it for a while now, and nothing has really changed about him. The 4-seam fastball is still exactly what it needs to be. He's getting a near 30% whiff rate on it, which is outstanding. On top of that, getting some high exit velocity, getting a lot of pop-ups on it, which I really love to see from him. Wheeler's sinker, which is his secondary, the pitch that he threw the second most. It was the only pitch in 2024 to produce an average exit velocity of 85 mile per hour or lower, and an average launch angle at 0 degrees or lower on at least 150 plate appearances. So again, getting on multiple aspects, getting some really solid results on that low contact and a low launch angle, a high ground ball rate on that. That's exactly what a sinker is supposed to do, and Zach Wheeler's doing it just about better than anyone else, which I think is a really good sign for his career longevity, right? Sinkers are not a pitch that you have to blow away from people. You don't have to get high strikeouts on it. You have to do exactly what Zach Wheeler has done with it, and the fact that he's doing it right now, I think, shows eventually he can, transition that into being the top pitch in his arsenal, and continue to succeed off it. So Zach Wheeler is my number 3. I'm continuing to see just outstanding year after year from him. And yeah, he is still worthy of being a top 3 pitcher in the league for me.
Yeah, and I will second you on that, as Zach Wheeler is my number 3 as well. He was my number 2 on last year's list. And yeah, he's heading into his age 35 season. He ranks 4th in innings over the last 2 years, so he's definitely on the workhorse side of things, and partially because of that, he's first in F WAR over the last 2 years, and as you mentioned, he's first in F WAR over the last 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 years. But yeah, among 21 pitchers with 350 plus innings over the last 2 years, Wheeler leads in ERA and strikeout minus walk rate, and he also ranks 3rd in FIP. And among the 40 pitchers who have thrown 5,000 plus pitches over the last 2 years, Wheeler has the lowest average exit velocity against, the lowest expected batting average, expected slugging, and expected WOBA against. He is, based on those numbers, I think he has been just the best pitcher over the last 2 full years. 2 full years going back to, March of 2023. I expect him to really continue success into next year. I don't really, there's nothing that he showed last year to make me think that his performance will devolve in any way. So I expect him to be a top pitcher once again. Who do you have at number 2?
Yeah, at number 2, I have another reigning Cy Young winner, this one in the American League, coming from the Detroit Tigers. It's Tarek Skubal. Again, talking about Snell, talking about Reagan's, a guy that had success in a smaller sample size. Well, I guess not in Snell's case. Success in 2023 and backed it up in 2024, this time in such a tremendous way. Everything. Yeah, I think Scooble kind of performed to like the 90th percentile of what I imagined he was capable of, and it was just an outstanding season. And he was so much fun to watch on the mound, especially in those September starts when he was kind of the entire rotation and performing as good as any rotation needs to be on his own. 228 strikeouts in 192 innings, a 272 expected ERA, 30% strikeout rate, 31% whiff rate, 31% chase rate. On top of that, above league average ground ball rate, weak contact, an average exit velocity of 87.5%. There was nothing more you really could have asked out of Tarek Skubal last year, in terms of overall numbers. Since 2023, Tarek Skubal is the only starting pitcher to post a qualifying season in the 90th percentile or higher on strikeout rate and walk rate. And he's done it in both years. It is Tarek Skubal 2, everybody else 0 in terms of being a starter, qualifying, and posting a 90th percentile strikeout rate and walk rate since 2023. It's pretty awesome. Additionally, between his four-seamer and his changeup, he became the first pitcher last year since 2022 to record a 30+% strikeout rate on 200+ plate appearances on multiple pitches within a season. So, I mean, the top two pitches that he throws, both of them just got outstanding results. Like I mentioned, 30% whiff rate or higher. So that was very fun to watch. I enjoyed seeing that. So yeah, Tarek Skubal, he's my number 2. I'm very excited to see another season of him. Would love to see the Tigers maybe extend him this year. He's already done the Tommy John. The Tigers didn't do much this offseason. I think they can kind of salvage all of it by signing Tarek Skubal to a long-term deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Probably becoming a fan favorite too. My number 2 starting pitcher for 2025 is Paul Skeens. He is heading into his age 23 season. Just won Rookie of the Year this past year and was a Cy Young finalist as well. And yeah, he debuted on May 11th last year, and from that date on, he led all qualifying MLB starters in ERA, strikeout minus walk rate, xFIP, and SIERA. And he also ranked second in FIP. And then also among 62 pitchers with 2,000 plus pitches thrown in that span, he had the lowest expected batting average, expected slugging, and expected WOBA against. So, I mean, just kind of almost undoubtedly from the time he debuted last year, he was the best pitcher in baseball. And then along with that, kind of the cherry on top, he also had a higher ground ball rate, higher pop-up rate, lower average exit velocity against, and lower expected numbers against him with runners in scoring position. So in the moments where it really, really mattered, he raised his level of pitching. And yeah, if he continues pitching like this, he will probably be number 1 next year for me. So yeah, Paul Skeens is my number 2. Who do you have as the best starting pitcher in baseball heading into 2025?
Yeah, I went back and forth a lot on if I wanted to do this or not, and I decided for it. I'm putting Paul Skeens as my number 1 starter in all of Major League Baseball going into 2025. Last year, Paul Skeens made 23 starts. He pitched 133 innings, struck out 170 batters, posted a 196 ERA, started the Major League All-Star game for the National League, won Rookie of the Year, was a finalist for Cy Young, also had a 52.3% ground ball rate despite everything else. Imagine what he could do in his first full season. Imagine what he could do in his first full season. We haven't even seen it yet. There's reports on Twitter that he's working on some new pitches, a new two-seamer, a new cutter, on top of everything that he already has. He already invented a two-seamer out of thin air last year with the Splinker, which was one of the best pitches in all of baseball. It had a 3.0 run value per 100 on 155 plate appearances, a run value of 18, one of the best in all of baseball. As a sinker, it's listed as a sinker. It's called a splinker. It's a mix between a splitter and a sinker. It had 30.3 inches on average of vertical movement, which is exactly what you're supposed to get out of a sinker. On top of that, it also gets a lot of whiffs, 29.3%. You're not supposed to get that on a sinker, but that's of course not what Paul Skeens throws. It's very cool that it registers that way. On top of that, the four-seam fastball averaging 98.8 miles per hour, throwing 100 with ease, bringing him to a 2.53 expected ERA last year, a 33.1% strikeout rate, only a 6.2% walk rate. On top of that, good average exit velocity numbers. Literally, like not sacrificing anything for any certain skill, kind of just picking up everything on his way to, like I said, in my opinion, being the top starter. He had a 248 expected WOBA against last year, which was the lowest among the 170 pitchers with at least 1,250 total pitches thrown throughout the season. It was also the third lowest among the 202 pitchers with at least 2,000 pitches thrown in any season since 2015 at age 25 or younger. And by the way, Skeens just finished his age 22 season. According to Fangraphs, Paul Skeens is one of just two pitchers since 2002 to post a season with 130 innings pitched, a ground ball rate above 50%, and a K rate minus walk rate above 25%. The only other pitcher to do so since 2002, you might have heard of him. His name is Clayton Kershaw, and he turned out to have a pretty good career for the Los Angeles Dodgers. This is the most exciting young pitcher we've seen probably since Steven Strasburg. There is so much excitement when he is on the mound, regardless of anything else, regardless of the lineup he's facing, the team he's on. It doesn't matter. Skeens Day is must watch every single time, and he is my number one pitcher in baseball going into next year.
Yeah, he certainly has a very good case. And yeah, there's definitely a reason to put him number one. However, my number one is Tarek Skubal, who I ashamedly did not have on the list last year. And I say that because I did see the potential there, but I did not bite. But luckily I did correctly pick him as the AL Cy Young, which is the first time I've picked a Cy Young correctly on this show. But Tarek Skubal is heading into his age 28 season. And, he returned from flexor tendon surgery on July 4th, 2023. And since then has put up a 2.51 ERA and 2.35 FIP in 272 and a third innings pitched. In that span, he leads all qualified starters in MLB in ERA, FIP, strikeout minus walk rate, xFIP, and SIERA. Also, among 112 pitchers to throw 2,500 plus pitches in that span, he has the lowest expected WOBA against and the second lowest expected slugging against. And yeah, in my opinion, he has very clearly been the best pitcher of the last year and a half. And also, in my opinion, he has the best chance to repeat as a Cy Young winner since Corbin Burns after the 2021 season, just based on just the dominant underlying numbers. You mentioned that strikeout rate and walk rate both being elite, both being at least 90th percentile each of the last 2 years. And that's, 90th percentile as a starter is really impressive because that includes, relievers who only threw 60 innings, and Tarek Skubal was able to outdo a lot of them. So yeah, I really have a lot of faith in Tarek Skubal, and I think he'll be the number one pitcher in baseball for 2025. But yeah, without further ado, do we want to get into our 10 through 1, or first do we want to just talk about some of the other pitchers we considered for this?
Yeah, without any order, the other guys I had in my top 20 were Justin Steele, Logan Gilbert, George Kirby, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, Corbin Burns, Dylan Cease, Roki Sasaki, Garrett Cole, Sonny Gray, and Logan Webb.
Yeah, the guys I considered were Sonny Gray, Garrett Cole, Framber Valdez, Blake Snell, Max Fried, Jack Flaherty, Justin Steele, Tyler Glasnow, and Dylan Cease.
I fully thought you were gonna have Steele on your list. I was like, this seems like a Chris guy. Like, yeah, this is exactly the kind of guy that Chris would throw up and be like, this is the big one.
Yeah, he's kind of fulfilling that Max Fried arc.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there was just too many interesting guys. I think this year maybe I valued like maybe innings less. Not that he threw a lot of innings last year, but or just kind of, I guess, the potential for dominance. And I see, Justin Steele having another very quality season, but I don't see the same potential for dominance as I do like Yoshinobu Yamamoto or Garrett
Yeah,
Crochet.
it's a
Um,
tough list to find
yeah,
spots to put him over guys.
yeah, because I saw Justin Steele was doing well again last year, and I was like, and his expected ERA was below 3, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll put him on the list next year, but there's just too many guys in the way, unfortunately. Um, but uh, but yeah, what is your 10 through 1?
Yeah, so my 10 through 1 was Michael King at number 10, Tyler Glasnow at number 9, Cole Reagans at number 8, Garrett Crochet at number 7, Blake Snell at number 6, Chris Sale at number 5, Jacob DeGrom at number 4, Zach Wheeler at number 3, Tarek Skubal at number 2, and Paul Skeens at number 1.
Yeah, my number 10 is Yoshinobu Yamamoto. At number 9, Corbin Burns. Number 8, Logan Webb. Number 7, Garrett Crochet. Number 6, Jacob DeGrom. Number 5, Cole Reagans. Number 4, Chris Sale. Number 3, Zach Wheeler. Number 2, Paul Skeens. And number 1, Tarek Skubal. And yeah, we only have one positional list remaining before we get into the Giantin Curran 50s.
Yes.
So yeah, fun stuff ahead, and it just reminds us that baseball season is right around the corner. Despite, unfortunately, it hasn't started yet. I know that's what everyone's trying to tell you, but in our eyes, it has not started yet. But it is going to start. It's going to start in like 6 weeks, so that's cool. Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, so we will be doing relief pitchers next week. And yeah, we still have some business to get to in this episode because we have the NL West to preview. Last week we previewed the AL Central. That was the opening of our preview series for 2025. And yeah, we will preview the NL West. We kind of just usually just go through some of the additions and subtractions, and then it really just highlight one player that we see potential for, maybe a potential breakout or just, who might exceed expectations in 2025. And then we'll ask each other a question, things that we might be concerned about or just interested in the other person's opinion about. So yeah, so we will start, with the NL West, we will start, and we always start from bottom to top. So it is the Rockies that we'll be talking about first. They went 61 and 101 and finished last in the National League West. They lost Brendan Rodgers and Cal Quantrill over the offseason, and they added Thairo Estrada and Kyle Farmer. Who's your player to watch on the Rockies for 2025?
Yeah, the Rockies, they're going to be playing some baseball this year. I know that they haven't gotten a lot of attention compared to some of the other teams in the division, but there will be baseball at Coors Field this year. And one of the guys that I have my eye on this year kind of had a breakout last year, but I think could be capable of much more. Kind of passes every test of mine with batted balls. Was Michael Tolia, their first baseman, who I really enjoyed getting to watch last year. A fun fact is that last year I decided to put on push notifications for the MLB Home Run Twitter bot for the first time. I've been following that account since 2016. Last year I decided to put notifications on just so I knew every single person that hit a home run that day. And for like a solid month, I felt like Michael Tolia just kept showing up every single day. And he kind of caught my eye, and everything that he was doing, I actually really liked under the surface as well. Last year, he joined Aaron Judge as the only two qualifying hitters to be 90th percentile or higher in barrel rate, sweet spot rate, and walk rate. So three different aspects of offense that only he and Aaron Judge were that elite in last year among qualifiers. Overall, he slashed 235, 343, 477 for an 820 OPS and a 114 weighted runs created plus. With reverse splits, by the way, actually had a higher OPS in Coors Field. By the way, that slash line, that's the final 75 games of his season. So a very solid finish of the season, a slow start, but really got going towards the end of it. Both during and throughout the season, like I mentioned earlier, he had a higher OPS away from Coors Field. He also had more fly balls than ground balls, which is something that I love. On top of that, a 41.6% pull rate and for 32.6% of his fly balls being pulled. So all of the current check marks, love guys with high fly ball rates, love guys with high pull rates, Love guys that pull their fly balls, and Michael Toglia did all of those things to an astounding degree. 14.9% of Michael Tolia's total batted balls last year were barreled and in the sweet spot. That was the fifth highest rate among the 237 hitters with at least 250 batted balls last year. The other four were Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, Shohei Ohtani, and Juan Soto. So pretty good company to be in there with Michael Tolia. From July 5th through the end of the season, he had a 369 expected WOBA, which ranked 15th among the 115 hitters to see at least 1,000 total pitches or more in that span. He also had a 509 expected WOBA on batted balls, which is the fifth highest among the 170 hitters with at least 150 batted balls in that same span. I would like to see him, continue to take that kind of step up on offense and kind of do it over the course of a full season. I would consider this pick successful if he puts up an 850 OPS or higher in at least 450 plate appearances.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, and that leads to our first overlap.
Oh, nice.
First
I kind
overlap
of
pick
figured
of the year.
this would be an overlap.
It's because
Like
there's
the expected overlap on this one is very high.
yeah, indeed. Like, it's the Rockies, so you kind of there's not a lot of options to choose from, I guess. And Tolio really sticks out. And yeah,
Also, both of us have made the grave mistakes of picking pitchers in the past,
yeah,
which
indeed.
is not really setting yourself up for a lot of success a lot of the time.
Right, exactly. Um, and just an overview of Michael Tolia. He was a first round draft pick by the Rockies in the 2019 MLB draft, and he's heading into his age 26 season. And yeah, in 458 plate appearances in 2024, he hit 218 with a 767 OPS and a 105 OPS plus, and also hit 25 home runs in just 116 games. Despite modest results, he was in the 90th percentile in expected WOBA and 93rd in expected slugging, while being at 90th percentile or higher in average exit velocity, hard hit rate, walk rate, and sweet spot rate. He underperformed his expected metrics, but out of the 216 hitters with 1,500 plus pitches seen in 2024, Tolio had the fifth unluckiest difference in WOBA and expected WOBA, seventh unluckiest difference in slugging and expected slugging. Or wait, I wrote it down wrong. He had the fifth
Sometimes I do
unluckiest difference
that.
in
I
WOBA
get
and
it.
expected WOBA. And he was top 10 unluckiest in the other categories as well. He also pulled 33% of his fly balls, which is really good. League average is around 26%. And out of 237 hitters with 250 plus batted balls in 2024, Tolia had the 19th highest rate of batted balls being pulled fly balls. Top 10% for sure there. And that's definitely gonna, increase the probability of you hitting home runs. And, he was able to hit 25 in just 116 games. So yeah, there's potential for a breakout. And yeah, I think for me, like if he hits 30 home runs and puts up like a 115 OPS plus, that would be successful for me.
Yeah. And a lot of that OPS plus is because it's cores. If he was playing for like the Tigers, he'd probably be saying like 30 home runs in a 130.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But yeah, now on to the next team on
No,
to
we got to do
questions.
questions.
On to questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, what is your question about the
Yeah.
Rockies?
So my question is regarding two longer tenured major leaguers, one of them being longer tenured with the Rockies that are expected to be returning this year from injuries. Who is more likely to post at least 3 F4, Herman Marquez or Chris Bryant?
It's a good question. More likely, because yeah, I don't really foresee that for either of them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember. I'm gonna be looking up like Herman Marquez's what he was doing before injuries. Because yeah, he is 3 years removed now from 180 innings. putting up 1.3
But
F4.
yeah, but not a good 1.1, not a good 180 innings.
In 2021, he put up 3.4, and he's put up over 3 F4 in 3 seasons of his career. Um, it yeah, I'm just kind of looking stuff up on the fly here, seeing like if
Mhm.
is there any underlying stuff that should suggest that
It's hard to say when he
things
hasn't
are going
pitched
to
a full
change.
season in so long.
Yeah, and I'm
That's the
looking.
end of the thing. That's why I picked these two. It's like there's not much recency to go off of here. It's kind of vibes.
Yeah, and both have gotten contracts. I'll just go with Marquez because he's younger, and I looked at Brian's Savant page, and there's really nothing inspiring for me
Yeah,
to
there's
to
not.
go off of. So I'll go with Herman Marquez, more likely to reach three wins above replacement. Um, my question also revolves around wins above replacement. Ezekiel Tovar and Brenton Doyle both had exactly 3.7 F4 last year. Who will have more this year?
Yeah, this is kind of two very similar players in terms of how they accumulate that F4. Um, well, I mean, I would love to see Ezekiel Tovar maybe drop the swing rate a little bit. I think it's very possible that he will do so. What was he at, like 62% last year? Um, Actually, no. Tovar had a very strong year last year. I mean, I think he's got a lot of step to take, but there's definitely kind of the foundation being planted. Doyle obviously had a fantastic year last year. I think Doyle's season last year was closer to his ceiling though. So for that reason, I am going to go with Tovar because I think even if they both take steps up, I think Tovar has a better chance to take a bigger step, if that makes sense. And both of them are phenomenal defenders. They're good base runners. So it's more about the offense, and I like Tovar to make some changes and improve himself a little bit.
Right, right,
You know,
and
hey,
yeah,
if
Tovar.
he can get his swing rate down to like 55%, which would still be like among the top in the league,
Yeah.
we're still cooking though.
Yeah, Tovar also had the better 2023. Um,
Yeah.
so he does have a little bit
Well, I
better of
mean, Brendan, with all due respect to Brendan Doyle, he did not set a high bar in that
yeah,
competition in 2023.
true, very true. Um, My so yeah, now on to the
Hmm.
next team, the San Francisco Giants, who went 80 and 82 last year and finished fourth in the National League West. They lost Blake Snell, Mark Canha, Michael Conforto, Taylor Rogers, Kurt Casale, and Thairo Estrada, and they added Willie Adames, Justin Verlander, and Joey Lucchesi. And my player to watch from the Giants is Hayden Birdsong. He's a sixth round pick. He was a sixth round pick from the Giants in 2022, and he's heading into his age 23 season, and he just seems like a decent project for the Giants. And I don't think he'll be, a finished project by the end of the year, but I think he can make some improvements based on what we saw last year. He threw 72 innings at the major league level last year and put up a 4.75 ERA, 4.67 FIP, 4.65 expected ERA, and 81 ERA plus. So yeah, obviously very underwhelming numbers in terms of the results. But kind of what stands out about him and makes me think he has potential is his strikeout rate, whiff rate, and fastball velocity, as well as his pitch movement. He struck out 28% of the batters he faced at the major league level and was in the 83rd percentile in strikeout rate in 2024. He had a 30% whiff rate, which was 82nd percentile, and he averaged 95.8 miles per hour on his four seam fastball, and that was in the 78th percentile. He also had 7.4 more inches of vertical drop than average on his changeup and 3.3 more inches of vertical drop than average on his curveball. And among 261 qualifiers, he had the third highest vertical drop above average on his changeup. Third highest out of 261 qualifiers, he's third best at, having drop on that changeup. And he also had a 49% whiff rate on his slider, and out of 171 pitchers to throw 250 plus sliders in 2024, Birdsong's whiff rate on his slider ranked fifth So yeah, he does have some really interesting things about his arsenal and some of the results that he's been able to get on his arsenal. But yeah, he clearly needs to make improvements with his control and ability to prevent hard contact. But yeah, I think he's really working with a good base that could turn into something good, especially with him being so young at 23 right now. So yeah, Hayden Birdsong, I'm looking to see some steps out of him, some steps be taken from him in 2025. Who's your Giants player to watch in 2025?
Yeah, my Giants player to watch is a guy that I've already touched on quite a bit this offseason. I believe I had him as my number 5 second baseman. And I'm anticipating kind of like Tolia, a guy who did very well for a period of last year that I'm hoping to see that maybe expanded throughout the year. I'm talking about Tyler Fitzgerald, who was for a month was like one of the best hitters in the league last year. Tapered off a little bit throughout the rest of the season, but I think he can find some sort of middle ground with that and keep that for a full season. From July 9th through the end of last year, he ranked tied for 24th among position players in F4, despite ranking tied for 97th in total plate appearances. Throughout the year, Tyler Fitzgerald pulled 49.8% of his batted balls, which was the 10th highest among the 284 hitters with at least 200 batted balls. He also pulled 43.5% of his fly balls, the 6th highest among the 285 hitters with at least 50 fly balls that were hit. His 14.5% pulled fly ball rate was the 4th highest on the aforementioned list of 284. Additionally, 20.3% of his total batted balls were pulled and in the sweet spot, and that was the 7th highest on that same list of the 284 hitters with at least 200 batted balls. I talked about him earlier, obviously, as a guy that, doesn't have a lot of power. His average exit velocity wasn't terrifically high last year. His expected numbers by default weren't high because they don't take into account where on the field you're hitting the ball. He also struck out a lot last year, so I certainly don't think he's going to maintain at the same offensive level. But if he could remain, in the low 800s for me, I think that could be really solid. His defense wasn't particularly good last year. He had -2 outs above average at shortstop, but he's not going to be playing shortstop. He's going to be at second base. I think making that change could benefit his defensive numbers with Willy Adames coming in. Not only is he changing positions, but he's going to be learning from a very solid defender, a guy who's put up some good numbers the last couple of years. I really anticipate, some steps forward for him. Obviously, I'd like to see him strike out a little less than 30%. But if you can keep that pull rate going, if you can keep the fly ball rate going, and improve the defense with the positional change, improve the strikeout rate, I think we could see a really solid player over the course of a full season. On top of that, the base running is also really solid. Last year, he averaged 30 feet per second in average sprint speed, which is considered a bolt. He ranked 15th in bolts, despite ranking 291st in competitive runs. So a lot of good stuff there as well. He has a chance to be a solid player at basically all aspects of baseball this year. I would love to see maybe 4.5 F4 if he plays a full season. I think he's capable of something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. With and yeah, I guess going back to Hayden Birdsong, like in terms of how I would measure my success for him, like 100 plus innings and an above average ERA plus, probably.
Yeah, that works.
Because
that works.
he had an 81 ERA plus last year, so if he bumps that up 20, I think that works. But yeah, now on to questions. My question is, who will be the Giants' top 2 pitchers in F4?
Top 2. Okay, well, I'm gonna go with Logan Webb as one, obviously.
Yeah,
I think
that was a given.
Yeah. So it's really just who's gonna be second, right?
Yeah, right.
So I mean, we're talking about Robbie Ray, we're talking about Kyle Harrison, maybe Verlander. We're talking about Hayden Birdsong, like you mentioned, Landon Roop as an option. Yeah, that is a good question. Jordan Hicks as an option. You're absolutely right. Yeah, that is a good question. I might go bold and say Kyle Harrison. I think there's definitely a lot of steps up to be taken, but he did pitch a decent amount of innings last year in his rookie season. Showed some kind of promise. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go with Kyle Harrison as my second pick there. Is he right? He's anticipating to be in the rotation.
Yeah, I think he's projected like number 5 by Fangraphs.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, 8.54 strikeouts per nine, 3.04 walks per nine. Obviously, got to cut down on the home runs, but yeah, I think there can be a lot of decent stuff there.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, he's only 23, so
hmm
obviously there's room to grow. Or time to grow, I guess would be the correct term.
Yes. My
Um,
question for you also involves Logan Webb. I know your question inherently didn't involve Logan Webb, but it pretty much did.
yeah.
Who will have the better strikeout to walk ratio? Not strikeout rate minus walk rate, but strikeout to walk ratio between Logan Webb and Robbie Ray.
Good question, because I would imagine
They have very different skill sets.
Webb's was around 4-ish last year. Let me take a look. Um, it was 3.44. It was 6.26 the year before.
Mhm.
So
I believe they're projected around the same.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And yeah, Robbie Ray, um, he was at 2.87 last year, 3.42 in 2022. In his Cy Young season, it was 4.77. Um, I guess just considering, because to me, like Logan Webb, his went down last year, and I expect it to go back up at least a little bit, maybe not get back to 2023 level.
Mhm.
But just considering how infrequent he he doles out walks compared to Ray, and considering that that really is what makes a great strikeout to walk ratio specifically, like that's why George Kirby is at like 9. Um, uh, I'll go with Logan Webb just based off of that.
Yeah.
If I think strikeout minus walk rate might be a different question. My so yeah, now on to the
Arizona Diamondbacks.
the Diamondbacks, who had a better record than 2023, but did not make the World Series nor the playoffs. They went 89 and 73 and finished third in the National League West last year. They lost Christian Walker, Jock Peterson, Kevin Newman, Paul Sewald, and Slade Ciccone or Ciccone. I think it's
So
Ciccone.
Saccone.
Ciccone.
Yeah.
Was wrong both times. They added Corbin Burns, Josh Naylor, Garrett Hampson, and Christian Pache. Who is your Diamondbacks player to watch in 2025?
Yeah, so my Diamondbacks player to watch, a guy that's projected to be in the everyday lineup, has been there for kind of a while, but really in a short sample showed some huge promises last year. I'm talking about Pavin Smith, who is projected to be their DH, replacing Jock Peterson. He only had 158 plate appearances last year, but in them he slashed 270, 348, 547 for an 895 OPS and 145 OPS plus. He also had a 395 expected WOBA, a 14.7% barrel rate, and a 17.9% chase rate. Additionally, he upped his pull rate from 32.9% in 2023 to 41.3% in 2024. He upped his barrel rate on fly balls from 23.2% from 2020 to 2023 combined to 45.2% in 2024. 6.6% of total swings that were taken by Pavin Smith in 2024 resulted in barrels, and that was the fifth highest rate among the 444 hitters with at least 200 competitive swings. Much like Tolia earlier, the other four are Judge, Stanton, Otani, and Soto, with Pavin Smith right behind. Additionally, Pavin Smith had 14.7% of his batted balls clock in at least 105 miles per hour last year. His previous career high in a season was 8.9%. He actually dominated the shadow part of the strike zone, which is kind of the fringe between in the strike zone and out of it. Pavin Smith produced a 0.9 run value per 100 among the pitches in the shadow part of the zone. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but it was the fourth highest among the 436 hitters with at least 200 pitches seen in that zone. Whether he was taking a pitch that was just outside, he was driving a ball that was inside or on the fringe of it. He was one of the best hitters in that part last year. He also swung at 41.8% of pitches in that zone, which was the 14th lowest which is the 14th lowest. He also had 31% of pitches thrown to him in that zone that were balls, which the league average being 25%. So that means he's not chasing. That means he's making the right swing decisions on the toughest decisions. on top of driving the ball out there. I would like to see him kind of like Tolia, do that kind of offense, but over more of a season. I'm anticipating he's probably going to get more playing time this year if he stays on the field. I'm hoping to see him get at least 450 plate appearances with a 125 OPS plus this year.
So yeah, another overlap for us here, unfortunately. But I guess we get to talk about Pavin Smith more because he did have a pretty spectacular season in the short sample size that he did have. He was frequently between the minors and majors last year and only played 60 games with the Diamondbacks. However, in those 60 games, he hit 270 with an 896 OPS and 145 OPS plus in 158 plate appearances. In his final 17 games, he hit 308 and slugged 712 with an 1105 OPS. And out of 173 qualifiers in that span, Smith ranked third in slugging and OPS behind Shohei Ohtani and Aaron Judge. And out of 223 hitters with 200 plus pitches seen in that span, his expected slugging, expected WOBA, and barrel rate all ranked fifth. So yeah, he definitely he finished the season very, very strong. Granted, it was just 17 games, but I'm interested to see what he's going to be doing because yeah, as you mentioned, that fly ball rate was skyrocketed, and as a result, that barrel rate skyrocketed, and his home run rate surely went up. So with Jock Peterson now off the team, he's on the Rangers now. Opens up a spot for Pavin Smith potentially, whether that be at the first base position or the DH role, depending on what the Diamondbacks do with him and Naylor. I do expect Smith to get some more playing time this year, and I'm interested to see what he does in a full season. I'm sure he'll get platooned a little bit, so yeah, the goal would probably be just to see like a 125 OPS plus in 300 to 350 plate appearances or more.
We're pretty much on the dot. I had 125 and 450.
Yep, yeah, exactly. So yeah. Now on to questions.
Yeah, this one's a pretty simple. We'll figure out how we want to evaluate it at the end of the season. Who will have the better year between Eduardo Rodriguez and Jordan Montgomery?
Yes, very appropriate that those two names are put together because yeah, they both were signed in free agency by the Diamondbacks last year, and both were disappointing in their own right. Rodriguez both didn't stay on the mound and didn't perform well when he was on the mound, and Montgomery mostly just didn't perform well and was moved to the bullpen, unfortunately. Who will have the better year? I think I think maybe just because Rodriguez's lack of success was more associated with unfortunate injury. I might lean toward Rodriguez, and I feel like he just has more strikeout capability and more ability to sort of dominate a game. I'm just going to double check his numbers to make sure I'm not completely making a fool out of myself. Yeah, like his strikeout rate and walk rate didn't have as major drop offs as much of a major drop off as Jordan Montgomery. So I think I just like Rodriguez's stuff better, and I think over a full season, he can recorrect and get back to where he was in like 2023 and at least under the surface in 2021. So I'll say Eduardo Rodriguez has the better season.
Okay.
My question is, will the Diamondbacks have over or under a 109.5 team OPS plus?
I'll take the over on that one. They had one of the best OPS pluses in the league last year. Yeah, and I know that Christian Walker's departure will make that tough. Same with Jock Peterson, but I think maybe a full year of Pavin Smith, like we both mentioned, Josh Naylor coming in. I think that those will be beneficial for the team OPS plus. I think that hitting in Chase Field will be beneficial, although maybe not for the ballpark adjusted stuff. I still think that it'll be enough. I know that there's better pitching coming into the division, whether it be Verlander or the slew of Dodgers guys, but I feel pretty optimistic that they can hit the over on that.
Right, absolutely. And
On top of that, this is like a team that's probably quite vengeful. They missed the playoffs last year despite having enough wins to make it because of the tiebreaker rules. I would imagine they're gonna come out hungry this year.
Yeah, for sure, for
More
sure.
anecdotal, but yeah.
Yeah, yeah, can definitely be a factor. And I think a lot of that offensive success came later in the year, which does make this year look a little bit better for them. Um, Now on to the San Diego Padres. They went 93 and 69 and finished second in the National League West. They defeated the Braves in the wild card series and then lost to the Dodgers in the National League Division Series. They lost Jerks Profar, Ha-Sung Kim, Tanner Scott, David Peralta, Kyle Higashioka, Donovan Solano, and Martin Perez. And they added Nick Pivetta, Jason Hayward, Connor Joe, and Ron Marinaccio. My player to watch on the Padres is coming out of the bullpen, uh, and he's heading in. It is Adrian Morahone. Um,
My 2021 Padres player to watch, I believe.
oh, I totally forgot about that.
Either
Um,
either that or I wrote about him once, but I've talked about Morahone before.
Yeah, he does kind of fit in the ilk of pitchers you enjoy.
Yeah.
Um, he's heading into his age 26 season, and in 2024 he had his first season with more than 35 innings pitched. And in those 63 and two-thirds innings pitched, he put up a 2.83 ERA, 2.79 FIP, and 3.34 expected ERA. Out of 169 qualifying relievers, he ranked 26th in FIP, which is top 16%. Uh, along with having an along with having an 18% strikeout minus walk rate, he succeeded with a low quality of contact against him. Uh, he was in the 91st percentile for average exit velocity and 86th percentile in ground ball rate. And yeah, I guess with this pick, I'm not necessarily thinking he's going to really raise his level. So I don't know if I really expect this to be a hit, but I guess for this to be really successful, he'd have to throw 60 innings again and maybe put up like a sub 2.5 FIP, or sub two, both a sub 2.5 ERA, sub 2.5 FIP, pretty high standard for him. But I'm just kind of more highlighting him as a quality reliever in that bullpen. And, even though Tanner Scott left, they still have a very quality left-handed reliever at the back end who might have more responsibility this year um, with some departures. Who is yours Padres player to watch?
Yeah, my Padres player to watch is another reliever. It's not Adrian Morahone. Um, he's a guy who had a big league cup of coffee last year that I think could maybe make an impact this year. I'm talking about Sean Reynolds, who is a relief pitcher, a right-hander that pitched 11 innings last year, put up an 0.82 ERA and 21 strikeouts. Again, 21 strikeouts in 11 innings. It's pretty good. He also posted an 83.7 mile per hour average exit velocity, a 42.9% strikeout rate, a 146%, a 146 expected batting average against, and a 0% barrel rates. Naturally, most of his work came in AAA last year, where he pitched 54 innings, posted an 11.7 K per nine, a 5.50 walks per nine, which could certainly be lowered, and a 0.67 home run per nine. So outstanding FIP if the walk rate gets lowered quite a bit, which a lot of work to do, but still quite interesting. Reynolds has a four seamer that he threw 53% of the time in AAA last year, at least on pitches that were tracked. It had a 29.8% whiff rate, which ranked 18th among the 117 AAA pitchers to throw at least 500 four seamers last year. His overall whiff rate ranked 51st among the 350 AAA pitchers to throw at least 750 pitches last year. So he is a strikeout option out of the bullpen. We could maybe see him have like a Jeremiah Estrada type of breakout last year. So kind of just continuing with that theme of strikeouts and stuff. I would love to see him pitch maybe at least 30 to 35 innings out of the bullpen last year and keep the strikeout rate above 25%. Let's just see him continue to blow guys away. Maybe the run prevention is something that comes later. Maybe the walk prevention is definitely something that comes later. But I would at least like to see him keep this clear skill that he has shown in AAA and through that brief period in the majors.
Right, right. Yeah, that's 21 strikeouts in 11 innings is quite an accomplishment.
Mhm.
Now on to questions.
Yeah.
My question, for context, the Padres had 5 players receive MVP votes last year. Those were Jackson Merrill, Jurickson Profar, Manny Machado, Luis Ariz for some reason, and then also Dylan Cease.
What do you mean for some reason? I think we know why.
Yeah, he won the batting title, and
Yeah, come
really all
on.
that matters. But the Padres just had 5 players receive MVP votes last year. How many Padres players will receive MVP votes this year?
Yeah, well, notably, not on the list was Fernando Tatis Jr. Not because he didn't deserve it. I mean, he got hurt last year. It makes sense. Um, Literally all it takes for Luis Ariz to receive MVP votes is win a batting title or hit around 300, whatever it may be. Also be flexible with his position. Wherever you put him, he's going to do bad, but he's going to be there, and that's all that matters. Um, so I mean, yeah, in terms of guys that could get MVP votes, um, I would say Michael King because I threw him on my top 10 pitchers list, so I'll put him down. I'll put Tatis down. I'll put Merrill down, and I'll put Manny down. So I'll go with four Padres. It doesn't have to be the guys that I named, does it? Does it just have to be the number?
It just has to be the number, yeah.
All right, I'll go with four, and bonus
Yeah,
points if it's those four. That'd be pretty
yeah,
impressive.
that would be very impressive, indeed. Um,
So for my question, last year Fernando Tatis Jr. hit 21 home runs, and Luis Arias drew 24 walks. So quite simply, will there be more Fernando Tatis Jr. home runs or Luis Arias walks? Similar
very,
to similar to a different Luis Arias question you asked last year.
yeah, that was the highlight of the review, is
Yes,
finding out that for a second year in a row, Jake Berger had the same number of home runs as Luis Ariz
Luis
had
Arias had
strikeouts.
strikeouts.
Um, Pretty unreal. Um, so yeah, Luis Ariz, 24 walks. I feel like even for him that might be a bit low, but maybe he just never gets walks. Um,
Is that low for him? He had 35 in 2023 and 50 in 2022 and 43 in 21. So yes, that is low even for him.
yeah, so I would expect that to rise,
And
but
it was also the most plate appearances that he had in a season.
um, yeah, wow. But yeah, obviously I would expect Tatis's home run numbers to go up because he only played 2/3 of the season last year. So I would certainly expect him to get over 30 home runs. Like, he definitely has the potential to get 40. He's already gotten 40 in a season. Um, since maybe Arises thing might be more a trend, and Tatis's um low home run total last year was more of a result of injury. I will go with Fernando Tatis Jr.'s home runs.
Okay.
I'm not putting my faith in Luis Suarez this year like I did last
Shocker.
year. But hopefully they're the same number again. That would be pretty dope. Um, but yeah, now on to the the super team, the team that ruined Major League Baseball, and
Yeah, as
there's
we
no
know it.
reason to watch. We won't be watching any MLB games because we know it's already determined for the Dodgers. But yeah, it is the Los Angeles Dodgers. They went 98 and 64 last year. They won the National League West, defeated the Padres in the NLCS, or NLDS, defeated the Mets in the NLCS, and defeated the Yankees in the World Series. They lost Jack Flaherty, Gavin Lux, Walker Buehler, Kevin Kiermaier, Daniel Hudson, and Kike Hernandez, and Ryan Brazier. And they added Blake Snell, Roki Sasaki, Tanner Scott, Michael Conforto, and Kirby Yates. Who is your uh, Dodgers player to watch?
Yeah, so the Dodgers obviously made a lot of headlines this offseason for some of the additions they made, for re-signing Teoscar Hernandez, for just doing everything they can to become the best versions of themselves for next year. One guy that didn't make a lot of headlines was Michael Conforto, who you did mention as one of the additions, and you're making a face like you also have him. I don't know if that's you do. Yeah. Three repeats on this episode. That's got to be a
That,
record,
that
right?
might be a record. I don't know if
That
we've
has
ever
to
had
be.
more than two.
Yeah, yeah, only signed for I believe 17 million, and it was kind of viewed as like, oh, this must be they're moving on from Teoscar, putting Michael Conforto there instead. Nope, they're not doing that. They're actually getting them both. But I think Conforto could be a candidate for like a sneaky bounce back, breakout, whatever you want to call it, season. On the surface level, he made marginal gains on offense last year, but the underlying numbers suggest there should have been, could have been a lot more. Uh, Thanks to recently added bat speed data from 2023. We know that Conforto's average bat speed went from 73 miles per hour to 74.1 mile per hour between the second half of the 2023 season and the entirety of the 2024 season. So that's something that's very much in his control that he had much better speed on last year. He also raised his average of exit velocity by 1.3 miles per hour last year and his barrel rate by 3.9 miles per hour. Conforto's pull rate went from 31.6% in 2023 to 41.5% in 2024. His pull rate on fly balls also went from 22.9% to 31.9%, a 9% increase. And his barrel rate on fly balls went from 22.9% to 29.8%, nearly a 7% increase. But despite all that, those kinds of signs should point to massive offensive gains, but we didn't really see that out of Conforto last year. And I think a lot of it is because he was just not made for San Francisco as a left-handed power hitter. You have triples alley out there. You have a taller right field wall. And I think it got the best of him. He slashed 216, 292, 341 for a 652 OPS at home last year, and 253, 323, 530 for an 852 OPS on the road. He had a 122 TOPS plus on the road last year, which means that it's his OPS in contrast to his own averages, which means he was a 22% better than his own average hitter on the road. That was the fifth highest among the 137 hitters with at least 250 plate appearances on the road last year. His home run rate on barreled fly balls at home last year was 20%, and on the road it was 72.2%. His home run rate on pulled fly balls went from 22.2% at home to 57.1% on the road. And I think the change of scenery will do very nicely for him next year. According to StatCast, he would have hit 15 home runs playing every game at Oracle and 21 at Dodger Stadium. It's a pretty simple thing for Conforto this year. I want to see an 850 OPS in a qualifying season. I think he could be one of the best hitters on the Dodgers, which is saying a lot. I think he could be a sneaky, like, how did the Dodgers, how did this one sneak through the cracks and the Dodgers get this guy too? I think there's a lot of big improvements that we should see from Conforto this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and very very good analysis there because I actually didn't look into the home road stuff. So it's very good that you did because that does the breakdown
There's a lot of explaining.
a good service for sure. And yeah, just kind of going over Michael Conforto because he is my player to watch. He had a good career with the Mets, missed all of 2022, then played 2 years with the Giants before signing with the Dodgers this past winter. In 488 plate appearances in 2024, he hit 237 with a 759 OPS and 116 OPS plus. He also had an 85th percentile expected WOBA and 89th percentile expected slugging. He underperformed his expected metrics and was the 14th unluckiest in batting average and expected batting average of 216 hitters with 1,500 plus pitches seen. From 2023 to 2024, his average exit velocity increased from 88.9 miles per hour to 90.2 miles per hour, and barrel rate increased from 7.9% to 11.8%. And with barrel rate, he had the ninth best year-to-year change among 177 qualifiers from 2023 to 2024. And that barrel rate was in the 80th percentile in baseball last year. Also from 2023 to 2024, he went from pulling 23% of his fly balls to pulling 32% of them. So yeah, just kind of everything under the surface looks really, really good. And he's kind of poised, if he continues that process, and continues hitting barrels at that rate and pulling fly balls at that rate, everything else, I think he could really be he could be a very productive player and maybe like be similar to Teoscar Hernandez and how they produce. With very quality offense, maybe not the best on defense, but will kind of just show out on offense. And I kind of would have similar level or standard for success here. I think like a 125 OPS plus in 450 plate appearances. I'd find that successful. Maybe not a hit, but successful. So yeah, now on to questions.
Yeah, I think I might know your answer given the way that the rest of this episode has gone. But which pitcher will lead this team in F4 this year?
Which pitcher? Yeah, I mean, based on my ranking, it would be Yoshinobu Yamamoto. And yeah, I think I think I'm just kind of trying to push the Yamamoto train along because obviously
Mhm.
with the Sasaki's getting all the hype now that Yamamoto got last year. And I just want to remind everyone, Yamamoto is still really, really good. And
Look at his stats from after that first game.
yeah, it's like I think 2.53 ERA,
It's something like
2.58
that,
whip.
yeah.
It's really, really good. And it's just the fact that he got injured in the middle of the year, which does matter. But like looking at this upcoming year, like I don't, I can't forecast that that's going to happen again. So yeah, I'm going to say, especially given that it's F4 and it's based on FIP, and Yamamoto had a 2.61 FIP last year. I'm going to go with Yamamoto.
Yeah.
Because and yeah, like I guess if I thought Glass now would have the innings workload, maybe it would be Glass now, but um Yamamoto, I think I can rely on the innings a little bit more, and he's also he was at a similar FIP as Glass now last year, I'm pretty sure. My question is also revolving around Dodgers pitchers. Who will lead the Dodgers in innings?
In innings. Okay, this is interesting because every single starting pitcher on this team has injury history.
That's what,
Um,
yeah. The the
yeah.
the team leader last year had 140 innings, and it was Gavin Stone.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with I can't even like jokingly say one of the random names because it's like, oh, Dustin May. No, he also has injury problems. Tony Gonsolin. No. Um, I might honestly also go with Yamamoto. I'm going through the process in my head. Like Sasaki got hurt last year, and also he's going into his first big league season. Snell, I mean, yeah, Snell's always had his injury problems. Glass now, same thing. I'm gonna go ahead and say it's not gonna be Otani. Although I guess you can't rule that out. I'm gonna go with Yamamoto as well. I think that's the safest pick, and also one that I do.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah, so that does it for it's frozen a little bit. Hello, hello.
You
It
cut out
fro
for me.
yeah, it froze.
Okay.
I will but yeah, you said everything you had to say, right?
Yeah, I said Yamamoto.
Yeah, exactly. Um, so yeah, that does it for the National League West preview. And that does it for this installment of Above Replacement Radio. We hope you enjoyed this one. If you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and want to watch the conversation as it happens, go to the YouTube channel. It is called Above Replacement Radio. We have, lots of content there, 5+ years of or I guess not 5+ years of
Well, yeah,
podcasting yet, but we do have
close
about
to it.
5 years of content on there. Baseball history series, also a good amount of guest interviews. We've talked to Jeff Passan, Chris Rose, Foolish Bailey, Sarah Langs, Mike Petriello, Mark Simon 4 times. We've talked to Matt Brash, the reliever for the Mariners. Kind
Possibly
of
another one coming in the next week.
possibly another one added to the
Possibly.
list. We will see about that. It looks pretty good right now. So yeah, go make sure to do yourself a favor, check out the Above Replacement Radio YouTube channel. We have a guest playlist with all those interviews, all in one place that's easy to find. I'll also follow us on social media. Follow me on Twitter at Chris_Gianta. Follow Daniel on both Twitter and Instagram at Daniel_Kern, and follow the show Instagram at Above Replacement Radio for all the show needs. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we hope to see you next time, where we will be talking the top 10 the top
Relief
10 relievers
pitchers.
in baseball. And
I believe the AL East is next.
yes, we will be talking the top 10 relievers and the AL East. We will see you then.
This conversation is over.